A mechanized gate clangs shut as the sun sets over the quiet ranch neighborhood, cutting off two shocket horses in the middle of a gallop. A few moments later, a loud alarm with sirens, flashing lights, and mayhem reverberates over the valley. With her arms folded at the keyboard, Karen Peterson looks on in terror as her smart-minded power move sets off a series of events that are completely out of her control. I'm Jake Donovan, a veteran and lifelong rancher, and I recently moved my horses to Meadowbrook Ranch, a remote neighborhood regulated by a homeowners association and ideal for equestrian living. I rapidly got in trouble with Karen Peterson, HOA president, who claimed that my horses were too noisy and that my use of the shared route was disruptive. Despite my quiet disposition and amiable manner, she made it apparent right away that she didn't appreciate outsiders, particularly those who didn't just have ornamental barn aesthetics but truly used their property for horses. The issue began modestly. Even though the track was explicitly made for horses, Karen would put passive-aggressive messages about hoofprints on it in my mailbox. She claimed that my horses knighting at 6 in the morning was against the noise law. Conveniently, she ignored the fact that her own Pomeranian snarled constantly from sunrise until sunset. I made an effort to be considerate, even offering her fresh eggs from my hens as a token of goodwill, but she simply wrinkled her nose and claimed to only eat eggs from organic stores. 2 weeks after I moved in, she filed her first formal complaint. She said that my horse trailer was parked 3 inches over the allowed space when she arrived at my door with a clipboard and a measuring tape. She sighed and stated she would be looking over the original drawings when I pointed out that the lines had been painted incorrectly and that my caravan was in the right location based on the property survey. I discovered a $30 fine attached to my caravan. The following day, for parking it improperly while it was being reviewed, the horse height incident followed. My elderly neighbor, Margaret Cooper, called to inform me that Karen was in my pasture, with a stepladder and measuring tape, while I was out of town attending a veterans reunion. When I arrived home, I discovered a notification indicating that Thunder was 2 inches taller than the 16-hand maximum horse height allowed by the community. Since the community's founding, the regulation that is hidden on page 97 of the HOA handbook has not been followed. While I was away, Karen practically climbed into my field to measure my horse. When Karen started enforcing arcane laws from the HOA manual that hadn't been changed since 1992, things became more heated. All of a sudden, my horse trailer required permissions. I had to put my hay bales at certain angles, and it seems that my horses were 2 inches taller than was permitted. While I was at work, she trespassed on my property and used a tape measure to measure herself. When Karen learnt she could change the community gate schedule using her HOA president access, the issue became quite heated. When I needed to transfer my horses between pastures, which coincided inexplicably with what she called calm hours, she began to close it. The gate would crash shut in our faces every morning at precisely 7 a.m., right as I would bring Thunder and Lightning through for their daily exercise. At the monthly HOA meeting, I attempted to reason with her, but she simply gave me that phony smile and claimed to be acting in the best interests of the neighborhood. Tom Bradley and Susan Hartley, among other board members, appeared too shy to raise their voices. For 8 years, Karen had ruled with an iron grip while wearing a pastel cardigan as president. I submitted a petition signed by 12 other local horse owners who were also concerned about the gate timetable adjustments to one very memorable meeting. Karen rejected it without even examining the signatures, stating that the petition process necessitated a duplicate, 72-hour advance notification. Karen gave Tom Bradley a look that might have made him cry when he subtly stated that he had never heard of such rule. She then promised to give him the pertinent bylaws. That email never reached him. The psychological conflict escalated when Karen began enlisting allies. Although we resided in a neighborhood actually named Meadowbrook Ranch, with horse silhouettes on the entry sign, she persuaded 3 more recent arrivals that my horses were lowering property prices. Karen referred to me as a disruptive person who didn't know the rules. On a Tuesday afternoon, the last straw was reached, just as Thunder was halfway through. The gate abruptly clanged shut as I was guiding Thunder and Lightning back from the north pasture. The 800-pound horse became frightened and almost slammed me against the metal bars. Still on the opposite side, Lightning started to run frantically in circles and whinnied. in anguish at being split off from his friend in all of her plans for retaliation. Karen was unaware that the ranch's extensive emergency livestock alert system was connected to our community gate. This gate wasn't your typical one. It was a component of the $50,000 safety network that was put in place. 5 years ago, after a wildfire almost completely destroyed the valley, the gate activated the whole emergency sequence when it sensed an obstruction during an unplanned closure, particularly when large animals were involved. The siren, a piercing wail that could be heard for miles, was the first sound I heard. The strobe lights that were installed on each building and fence post then began to flash in a pattern that indicated a livestock emergency. Instructions for evacuation were issued over the community speakers via the automated voice system. In accordance with the emergency protocol, garage doors automatically opened to allow access to refuge throughout the neighborhood. Cameras scanning for wounded animals or escaping cattle. The communal drone took off from its charging station. Thunder was backed out of the gate once I was able to calm him down, but the damage had already been done. Volunteer responders started to show up in a matter of minutes. Dr. Patricia Wells, our local large animal veterinarian, Sarah Chen from Animal Control, and Bill Morrison from the fire department all hurried to the scene, anticipating a stampede. Or worse, Karen ran down the path, a mask of perplexity and worry covering her face. In an attempt to silence the alarm, she repeatedly pressed buttons on her phone, but the system had locked her out. It could only be reset by authorized emergency personnel once it was triggered. As more and more people showed out to assist with the fictitious emergency, she stood there in her pressed khakis and HOA president blazer. I held tight to Thunder's lead as I swiftly described what had transpired to Bill. When Bill understood that this was a false alarm brought on by gate tampering, his face clouded. While Dr. Wells examined both horses for injuries, he radioed dispatch to remain motionless. Fortunately, they were only frightened and not injured. Animal control employee Sarah began to inquire. Things started to become intriguing at that point. On her tablet, she retrieved the gate access logs, which displayed all of the programming modifications performed during the previous month. It was in black and white there. K. Peterson HOA administrators have 30 days to change the schedule for 17 gates. Were aimed at the precise moments I moved my horses. Even more damaging was the security footage. Just minutes before we arrived, the gate camera clearly captured Karen, manually forcing an emergency closure while fumbling with her phone and entering her override code. Using the community app, she had been monitoring our approach and timing it just right to cause the most disruption. After pulling out his notepad, Bill Morrison started writing. Falsely setting off an emergency alert was a punishable infraction, carrying $10,000 in fines. Animal cruelty charges were introduced for purposefully putting livestock in danger. Using HOA power for personal grudges was against several rules. As more evidence came to light, the list continued to expand. The other HOA board members were among the half of the neighborhood that had gathered by this point. Karen had reassured them that the gate adjustments were for security reasons, but Tom Bradley appeared especially agitated when questioned. Susan Hartley acknowledged that Karen had been gathering complaints against me, but acknowledged that she had never really checked any of them. At the age of 78, Margaret Cooper, still spry, approached Deputy Rodriguez holding a folder. Dozens of emails and screenshots detailing Karen's years-long harassment campaign against different residents were found within. She had been documenting everything in anticipation of the ideal opportunity to reveal Karen's misuse of authority. As he perused pages of fictitious fines, bogus infractions, and threatening emails from Karen's official HOA president account, the deputy's eyes grew wide. At last, Tom Bradley plucked up the nerve to confess that Karen had been blackmailing him for 2 years. After learning that his daughter had hosted a graduation celebration that went 5 minutes above the noise limit, she threatened to fine him $5,000 unless he supported her in every board decision. Karen had done the same to her over a hedge that was allegedly half an inch too tall, Susan Hartley said with a gasp. The emergency system promptly alerted the county sheriff, who arrived next. After reviewing the evidence, Deputy James Rodriguez told Karen that she was being investigated for using emergency systems improperly, reckless endangerment, and false emergency reporting. Her HOA membership was immediately terminated while a thorough inquiry was conducted. That evening's emergency HOA meeting was where the true satisfaction was found. Neighbors I had never even met crowded the community room to share their thoughts. I discovered that I wasn't the only person who had endured hardships under Karen's rule. She tried to ban Dr. Wells from making house calls to sick animals because commercial vehicles weren't permitted after 5 p.m., found the Johnsons for having the wrong shade of beige on their barn, and made the Millers remove a memorial garden for their late daughter because it wasn't in the approved landscaping guide, even among her erstwhile supporters. There was a unanimous vote to remove Karen from the board. However, the repercussions didn't end there. She had been embezzling HOA money to hire a private security firm to keep an eye on residents she didn't like. According to the probe, she had employed a lawyer for her personal conflicts, using HOA funds, and had placed covert cameras without the board's consent. After the ultimate total was determined, Karen was subject to 18 months of probation, $23,000 in fines, and 200 hours of community service, specifically at the nearby horse rescue. The judge mandated that she reimburse me for my veterinary bills and the emergency response expenses. When the state board discovered that she had abused her position of authority, she also lost her real estate license, putting an end to her career as the region's self-described leading expert in horse property. Karen's face turned from red to white to an odd purple hue when the judge read the punishment. Unable to form words, she opened and closed her mouth like a fish. All she could say when she was able to talk at all was that this was discrimination. That she had made the deliberate decision to live in an equestrian community. Karen finally realized that her reign of terror was over and fell back into her chair, facing social isolation and financial ruin in the community she had terrorized for almost 10 years.